Hey guys, welcome back to Mike's Nerd Cave. Today we're doing another Cave Conversations, episode 7. We got our guest back here again, Nick Shaw, and we're doing a special episode about the early days of esports and his early days in gaming. So it should be a fun one. Nick, you want to introduce yourself a little further?
Yeah, so my name's Nick Shaw, aka Jet Black on the internet. So I've been involved in esports probably since the early 2000s, probably around 2003, 2004 is when I really started playing games competitively versus just for fun. You can find me on Twitch, on Twitter at JETBLK, Jet Black, and I'm all over the place. So I'm on Instagram as well with my personal handle, Nick Shaw 12. And then, of course, I have my various companies and other stuff like that. So you can find me and Mike at Midnight Slate. And we've got various things going on with that for creating content, streaming, and of course, this content production.
Yep, and I'll make sure all of the links are down in the description for you guys, so you can find him, you can find the Midnight Slate Labs website, store, all that stuff. So definitely go check him out. And so I guess we should talk about what we're drinking today. We got something fun going on. I left the bottle actually right there on the front of the table. It's Pikesville. It's a rye, 110 proof. But we weakened it down a little bit. We made some Manhattans here to sip on. So cheers. And that's for how strong it is. It's pretty smooth. It's got a nice little spice to it at the front, but overall smooth.
Does not taste like 110 proof.
Yeah, no, that's why.
Whiskey is aged at least 6 years, distilled, bottled in Bardstown, Kentucky. Interesting. Love a good rye.
Yeah. So we'll be sipping on that today, and let's just talk about a little bit for the listeners how we met through, I guess, college, sports, all of that. I didn't really know you as well as one of our other friends, Joe. We're big into like PC gaming and all of that until really after college, because the only time I ever saw you guys was around volleyball. So it was kind of funny to realize like 3-4 years later that we had this similar interest we just never talked about.
So I think there was a period late in college and after college when I stopped playing games for a while because I was so busy traveling for work, and it was really hard to just keep up to the level that I wanted to play at. When you're grinding all day, at the time, Counter-Strike was pretty much the main game I was playing, and you're playing so much of that, and when you start traveling for work and real life and getting away from that, you get frustrated when you play competitive leagues and stuff like that, and you're not at the level, or your teammates that there's just a level of expectation when you've done the competition for so long and you've played at a higher level. So it was kind of frustrating where I just took a couple of years off. I was just so busy doing stuff with life and the travel for work where there was just some casual gaming for several years there until probably most recently. I say most recently, but it's been almost a year now when COVID came back, and it was like, okay, what else do we do? We're stuck in our houses. We're sitting around. Maybe it's time to like build another gaming rig. So that kind of revived the whole thing over the last year. And of course, like right now it's winter in upstate New York, so the weather's not great. Can't really go do stuff. So yeah, there was a period of time when it was just like not gaming in the sense that, a couple of my friends were that I played growing up with.
Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of the perfect timing too for you with Valorant coming out, and that's, essentially like a mix between Overwatch and Counter-Strike, more so Counter-Strike-like, and then Warzone. So, both of those games are right up your alley, and I know you've been streaming a lot of Warzone. I saw you got back to Valorant there for...
Got back to Valorant for a short bit, just trying out some stuff with the new rig. So the rig is kind of taking on its own life of upgrading some parts that I had from probably 7 years ago or so. I had a pretty good gaming rig back in the day, and then, of course, I just didn't upgrade it for the longest time. I think I put a new graphics card in it about a year and a half ago, and then that's about the extent until I just went almost like full send. Let's upgrade the whole thing, and then I ended up like replacing the case, and I was like, shit, I should have just bought this all from the start, because now I'm rebuilding the other PC for in this office studio that we're in, to have a streaming rig and a gaming rig that we can have in here for various things.
It was really funny when he upgraded his case. He had just gotten a 1660 Super, just to go along with. I think he was running like a 4770K.
Yep,
was your processor. So you paired a 1660 Super with it. That was a great pairing. But then when he upgraded his case, it looked hilarious because he got a full tower, and he had this little 1660 Super that was like maybe 5 inches long in there. And it didn't even look like he had a graphics card in his case.
It's actually like sitting back over here.
Oh yeah. And I won't spoil what he ended up getting, but he filled out the case pretty good. And I don't know. I'll let you do the honors of saying what your build is now.
Do we want to talk about that now, or do we want to start with like the early days, and then we'll build up to like here we are now with all like.
I say,
or do you want to spoil it now?
Let's spoil that now, right. And then we'll get into where you started from.
So the quote unquote shittiest thing in my rig right now is my Ryzen 9 3900X. That's the quote unquote shittiest thing, unless you're looking at like, oh, he's only got 32 gigs of RAM, right?
That's probably the shittiest thing.
The quote unquote shittiest thing. I mean, first world problems, really Nick problems at this point. So we upgraded pretty much everything in that rig. The 1660 Super turned into a RTX 3090 Founders Edition.
Yep.
And I was pushing just two 1080p monitors with that for the longest time. I still had my original BenQ 144 hertz panel, and that thing was not struggling at all doing anything. I was streaming and playing, 0 FPS drop, nothing going on.
I mean, it was like 6% usage.
It was like, bro, come on. And so ended up getting two 4K 144 hertz monitors from LG, the LG Ultra Gear, new 27-inch. I think it's like the 27GN 950-Bs.
Yeah, they're supposed to be that new like nano IPS monitors.
They look
doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
They look nice. And now I'm actually like flexing that 3090. I'm still getting 4K ultra graphics. I'm getting about 140 to 150 FPS in Warzone. Valorant, I'm getting 300 FPS still.
That's ridiculous.
At 4K max settings.
While streaming.
Yeah. Like I tested it out the other day and it's like nothing. Warzone drops a little bit, but I don't know. That game, just with how unoptimized it is, I'm not shocked, because it drops from about 140, 150 FPS to around 100 to 110.
Oh no, my 4K max settings game drops to 110 FPS.
But it's not matched up with like the refresh rate. So then when you're aiming in an FPS, it takes away that competitive advantage of smoothness and recoil control. And like when I think about like the early days of playing FPS and Counter-Strike, like what made people better than the average player in a pub is that you had some sort of idea about recoil control, crosshair placement, those things. And then, pub scrubs were just running around, literally running and shooting. Like Craig still does this sometimes. And that's why he loves Warzone, because he can do that.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you're talking about the early days. I want to go all the way back. What was like your first big impression? Let's not even talk PC yet, or unless that was your first impression, but your first like gaming or tech thing that just left a big impression on you that you can remember back to.
So my uncle gave me a Commodore 64, and that, if you're watching the video, this big briefcase like thing with a tiny ass TV screen, like about this big. So like I'm holding up maybe a 4x4 box. And I used to play this flight simulator on that. And the flight simulator was literally like the line of how the plane was tilting, and blue and green, maybe sometimes brown, depending if you're flying over a desert, air quotes. So very, very basic. And there was a couple other games that we had on the Commodore 64, but that thing did not work well. I think early on, probably around, I want to say 4, maybe 5 is when I got the original Nintendo, followed by Sega Genesis, started off with those pretty early, playing things like Duck Hunt, the Mario games, Zelda. So started off pretty early with those games, and then eventually it took a while to get the quote-unquote next-gen consoles like a PlayStation, when those came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was probably playing Super Mario 3 with my brother.
That's
2-player.
That's actually mine as well as the first 3 Mario Bros. Specifically, the original Super Mario Brothers on the NES, as well as Super Mario Brothers 3. Those are the 2 I played the most as well. So
there was a Simpsons game too, where you're Bart Simpson on a skateboard and you're just like going around quote unquote ollieing off things.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You'll eat my shorts.
Yeah,
and just stuff like that. But yeah, there was some. I've had a whole like laundry list of NES games that you blow in the cartridge to make it work when you put it in. That's what she said. But
maturity level maxed out. But yeah, no. So that makes sense. I mean, we grew up around the same time, so we had the similar experiences with that. Moving on from that, though, so those were your first console experiences, besides the Commodore 64, which is a computer. But what was your first experience now building a computer or getting into that whole, the PC master race, I guess, if you will, that side of things?
So we got our first family computer when I was 4 or 5 years old, and it was a $4,000 Quantex that had 166 megahertz. It was the original Pentium. I think it had 8 megabytes of RAM with a 2 gigabyte hard drive.
Big stuff.
$4,000. Soon after, I think around 6 is when I raided a family friend's basement for computer parts, and I found a Pentium 2 350 megahertz. So that was my first experience of like making a second PC because the family was so scared that I was going to break the $4,000 beast.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, 6-year-old playing with computer parts, building a computer. And I would say that's my first quote unquote gaming PC because like you played Oregon Trail and some other stuff on there. Yeah. And it was like
whatever you could run.
Yeah, you just doubled the speed from 166 to 350, and went from a generation of processor Pentium 1 to Pentium 2. So yeah, big gains on that. I think I had like 64 megs of RAM on that guy. So again,
yeah,
some good gains.
I mean, for then that's a solid amount of RAM at that time.
Yeah, so I mean, there was games on that. I think like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter that you play with a joystick and you're flying around. Just the early Star Wars flying games.
Yep.
And that was like some PC gaming, but I think when it really got kicked into gear was probably in the late 90s, early 2000 when I discovered Half-Life and Counter-Strike. I think Half-Life came out in like what, 99, something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember. I thought it was 2000. I feel bad for not knowing this. I thought it was like 2001.
It was late 90s. Let's say late 90s.
Oh, yeah, because Half-Life 2 is 2003.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then Counter-Strike came out.
Well, yeah. I mean, essentially, it was a mod off of Half-Life 2.
Yep.
And then, yep.
So I think 1.3 came out in 2001, late 2001. And I think I started playing Counter-Strike in early 2002.
Okay.
It was either 2001 or like right around Christmas time. I seem to remember like getting on Counter-Strike, the early days of 1.3, and then 1.5 came out, and then Steam came out for 1.6. And like before Counter-Strike, I was playing Diablo 2, StarCraft, Brood War, and playing those games and watching the stuff going on with StarCraft over in Korea. And that was like the first taste of like seeing the competitive side of video games, I think.
Right. I mean, that was the start of esports, essentially. I mean, I know there was always like arcade competitions and things like that, but nothing like this, the online gaming esports type thing. That's where it started to really take off.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, things like CPL popped up, Cyber Athlete Professional League, the Cal League and all that stuff. Like CPL was in the basement of a hotel. Convention center stuff. So like the whole early days of like competitive PC gaming was like very much like a bunch of nerds in a basement. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of looked upon, I think, as like this Dungeon and Dragon-y type thing, LARPing thing that's a bunch of sweaty nerds. And it was.
I play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, okay. All right. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, it was just like looked upon as like, this complete outcast type thing.
Yeah, it was kind of like a nerd cave, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Had to plug it.
But like, yeah, it was like Counter-Strike, I think, around 2002, which was like the major, like, okay, start playing it around 12, 13 years old. And then, play a decent amount of it in middle school, high school. and start doing things for esports organizations. Some of the biggest, in the industry, the old school ones, back when Team 3D, Ninjas in Pajamas, the first time NIP was around like early 2000s before they became SK Gaming.
Yeah.
So you have like the second iteration of NIP coming in like 2005, 2006 timeframe. They were like a team very early. They had, a couple other, like the American team X3 that turned into 3D more or less. But there was like an evolution of like the early days of Counter-Strike and then how that evolved and then became modern, what we see with CSGO, where you have these big stadiums filled with like competitions and viewers. Obviously, it's not going on right now. But
and I think that scene, sadly, is starting to take a dive. And not just because of COVID, but I think a little bit because of the way Valve doesn't really support it. And the salaries that are almost required of these pros, that it's really killing it off. And I know we talked about Valorant earlier, but that's, kind of taking it over. But yeah, I not to get too sidetracked from that, I want to get back into exactly what you were just saying. What was your first experience with one of those orgs? I don't know how high up the ladder you played. I know you traveled and you went to tournaments and stuff. What did you do on that side of things? Did you do more playing, working?
It was a combination at times. It depended. But I would, even if I was working for an org, I still had my own team in one of the leagues, and we were still up in one of the higher tiers. But there was one time that sticks out too was when we were in Virginia for a little local tournament with Complexity. And 9spot was on the team at the time. So I think it was Irokanji, Evolution, 9spot, and I'm trying to remember who else. But 9spot had an issue where he couldn't play in the tournament, so he had to go do something with his girlfriend. I forget what it was. It was some emergency that put him out for the weekend. And I was playing as the fifth man on that roster for the tournament.
For Complexity.
Yeah, and I was working for Complexity as their head of staff and content at the time. So most of the things I was early on when I was younger, I was a writer, writing coverage of the tournaments, the matches, writing articles that are more creative and opinion based. So some of the stuff that you would see on ESPN when it comes to real sports.
Yeah.
And then, for NIP SK, it was kind of writing but organizing the staff for content and doing editing for the content, and looking to hire and fire those people. But Complexity at the time, I was earning a monthly salary to be that role. And so that tournament was I played the tournament for the weekend, which was hilarious.
How'd you guys do?
We actually lost in the finals, and we were upset because this team from Texas beat us, and I forget who it was back in the time, but yeah, it was funny because all expenses paid for to travel for a video game. And I'm being paid this small monthly salary to work in esports at the time, and a lot of people were working for free.
Yeah, it was much smaller then.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but it was fun, kind of playing with a bunch of others that I was the youngest one by far. I forget. I think I was still in high school at the time, so I might have been 16, 17.
That's funny because that's I feel the average starting age now for almost. There's so many 16-year-olds in esports at this point.
Well, back then they had issues with the age just because of the content ratings. So, you needed to be 17, 18. If you were 17, you still needed to have, your parent sign off with the publisher. And I think even, you had to be 18 in most instances, depending on what the game was and what the rating was.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so there were certain rules and laws around it where you had to be a certain age where, you couldn't have, a 15-year-old, 16-year-old playing in some of these events and tournaments. So it was different back then, which, you could go play the amateur stuff, whatever.
Right.
You've got, Cal, which was the amateur league, to CPL, which was the tournaments in person. And yeah, you just went through some of that stuff where, there were some of those challenges in the earlier days.
Yeah. So you did a lot of that. You worked with Complexity, traveling, all that. How many years did you really do that for? I don't even know myself. So
I want to say I think I started working for orgs in 2004, 2005 timeframe. And then it was probably through almost the end of college where I was working for various orgs. So from a time frame of 2005-ish to 2012, 14 maybe.
That's crazy. Like, I knew you. Like, we played volleyball and stuff together then. I had no idea that you were doing any of this stuff, which it still blows my mind. But do you keep in contact with any of those guys through Complexity or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a couple of guys actually. The guy that replaced me for my role after I left is still there. He's a director of technology at the company. So they're like, they got bought by the Dallas Stars, right? Well,
Yeah.
essentially, they're owned by Jerry Jones and the Goff family. So they got acquired. Complexity is the one that I'm definitely closest to. Like, I still keep in contact with some people from NIP. Like he's got some controversy around him, I think, last year. So I haven't talked to him in a long time, but like Jason Lake, sometimes I'll text him occasionally. The director of logistics, Scott Ford, goes by Popcorn. He actually got hired as like a staff member by me. And he's still there. And that, like, these people, this is their full-time job.
Yeah.
Like, they're making salaries. They have, the evolution of these organizations. It's kind of crazy because, like, there's been an evolution of how they take care of the players and staff to the point that there's now, like, mental coaches the same way you would have sports performance coaches. So those various things to kind of manage, like, how you physically treat yourself, train, and in the game, and all those various things, and how you think the mindset through, refreshing and making sure burnout doesn't occur.
Well, and you got to be physically active to be mentally active. You have to keep your blood flowing if you want to be able to think quickly, and I think that's one of the misconceptions about esports and gaming is that it is just a bunch of fat, sweaty nerds. And no, actually, a lot of the esports athletes. I know that's also a controversial thing, but
so I mean, think about it too, because like if you're sitting and grinding 8 to 10 hours a day,
right?
So there and like there's stuff with like your joints, your wrists. I've heard of people having like ligament damage in their fingers from the WASD and various things from like keeping poor posture for hours on end
at like 18.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some like a couple of gamers that are late 20s now that I knew started very young, and they were definitely top of their game. Some of the Swedes that you hear about, they have like these health issues now because like early on it was just like nobody was thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So now, I mean, it's funny because they got all these gaming chairs and shit like that there's a lot of research on a lot of them actually do more damage than they are helpful because they're not designed for ergonomics for you to be sitting for extended periods of time.
No, they're just designed to look like a race car chair.
Yeah. There's some of them out there that are better than others, but some of them are definitely there's proven research out there that they're not doing a good job at what they're supposedly marketed for.
Yep. No, it is. It's sad, especially the cheap ones on like Amazon and stuff. I mean, I personally have a cheap office chair, a kind of gaming stylized chair, but it's specifically an office chair. And it, I would say it was good for about a year, and now there's no support, no cushion. I definitely need to replace it because if I sit in that chair for 3 to 4 hours just trying to stream or make a video, my back is killing me.
Right.
So I can see how so many issues can come from just sitting. So you got to be active when you're not sitting to be able to have the I guess core strength, the blood flow, everything like that to stay healthy. So really some of those kids are probably working out a lot more than the average person just so that they can sit there for 6 to 8 hours at a time and play their game.
Yeah. Yeah, like I know Complexity with their headquarters, they have access to the rest of the Star, which has workout facilities for the Dallas Stars. So they have access to those different pieces of equipment to work out. I want to roll back though real quick, just because I would be remiss for like the stuff outside of the organizations. I had my own orgs on the side where I had gaming teams, and locally we had a couple different teams that rosters with our friend Joe and Jeff.
I was gonna say if you ever
we went to LANs and stuff together like all the time.
Might know the name Jads.
Yeah, he's probably out there listening, going these two.
Yeah, I mean, he'll have a good story. I'll have him on at some point. I know he has some really fun stories from competing. So
yeah. So like we had like I had various iterations from like the Diablo 2 StarCraft days that turned into big clans where like that's where I got some of my technical chops making websites for those and really getting into like the whole scripting. Like clan scripts were a big thing back in the day, based off PHP and SQL, and then you just had all that as like your clan website for member features and all these cool things. If you didn't have one, you were kind of a shit clan back then. So we had various iterations, and I think one of the names that has stuck with me the longest that I've still tagged up occasionally games with is Evolution Gaming. So we had Clan Evolution that evolved to Evolution Gaming eventually. And Evolution, for a local team, we had a local Counter-Strike team that I was playing in as an in-game leader. And then we had a Halo team that was competing in Halo 2 and 3 locally.
That's right up my alley.
Yeah, there used to be, and I used to play Halo 2. So like on console, I think when Call of Duty and Halo came out, I was playing those with the sticks, and we had this conversation the other night. I was still, until last night, playing Warzone with a controller. And then last night, I was like, all right, we're just going to try mouse and keyboard because I'm kind of frustrated. I'm kind of inconsistent with a controller. It was that competitiveness going, I know like sometimes when I'm on with a controller, I'm good. But when I'm off, it's frustrating as shit. So I'm like, all right, mouse and keyboard, let's go back to the roots, right? Call of Duty, like I've always played with sticks on Xbox and PlayStation. Halo, sticks on Xbox.
Yep.
So it was just kind of natural to like start playing Call of Duty again. Picked up Warzone. January is when I think you guys dragged me on it. You're like, hey, we need to go play Warzone. Yeah, I was playing like Cold War, right?
Yep.
So I was like, all right, time to pick this up again. We'll try it. And then last night I was just like destroying people with mouse and keyboard because it's so much easier to track people and control recoil just based off those mechanics of playing for so long in other games and doing that.
I need to get my mouse and keyboard set up for Warzone because I'm still playing controller, and it is frustrating. I'm terrible on controller.
Like I was having fun, but like the inconsistency was driving me nuts. Because if I was on, great, but if I had a day where I just couldn't find it, the worst.
Yeah.
But like so like Evolution, we had these local teams. We went to this one LAN tournament with the Halo team. And I remember like, I showed up Mr. Manager or whatever because I was like on the Counter-Strike team, but it was my organization.
Yeah.
We had jerseys and everything. And there was this wing place close by. And I remember for like the team and like we had like one other person, like they were just taking photos, posting to the website. I went and got 50 wings for the boys to just chow down like on a break. And they've won a couple tournaments and it was like really cool. Some of them still play like Call of Duty now, and like I still occasionally will play with them. But yeah, back in the day, there was just this nice little Halo community in Rochester and Counter-Strike tournaments in the Western New York. I mean, you can go down to the old. I'm drawing a blank, but there was this nice LAN center in New York City that we used to go to. I'm drawing a blank, but yeah, I mean Cyberjocks. Arena 51 here in Rochester. We used to go to like all the local LANs and all that stuff. So it was, and again, we were running into the age issue for these local LANs as well.
Yeah.
So back when we were young, I think we had to be 16 to play in them.
Yeah,
and our parents needed to be there.
That's funny.
So
well, not Joe's. He was older.
Yeah, Joe was older. So I mean, he was fine. And we just said he's dad. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 2 years older than you guys. Yeah, he's dad. It's fine.
He's responsible. Yeah, if we did something stupid. That was like the early days of like drinking balls too.
He knows the right time to say run.
Now, let me rephrase that. Balls, BAWLS. The energy drink guarana, or however you say it.
I was gonna say the younger audience. There's a good chance they've never seen it because the only place you can really ever find that is
G Fuel.
I know that's essentially the new balls, but it's not. But the only place you'll really find balls, online, their website, which they actually ship it through Amazon, but it's pretty expensive. Or
how often do you have balls shipped to you?
I've done it once or twice, just not often. It's expensive. It's expensive. I think it's like $28 for a 10-pack.
Ooh,
yeah, it's rough.
It's a lot for balls.
It is, but it's weird. They have like 6 flavors now. Yeah, I know you're having a great time with this. But I know you can find it usually at like a computer parts store. Like, I'm sure Micro Center probably sells it, but we don't have a Micro Center near us. There used to be a computer parts store here in Rochester that always had it, but I don't think they're around anymore. Game Craze used to carry it, but they don't carry it anymore. So there really isn't a local area to go pick it up. It's pretty much online order only, at least for us. So there's a good chance any younger audience maybe has never seen it before. But if you like the energy drink thing, this was kind of before the energy drink boom. So there really isn't as much caffeine or anything like you're going to find in a Monster. It's almost more like a slightly more caffeinated soda. But they're really good. Definitely try them. Order a 10-pack or something of the original if you haven't. Maybe add in the cherry. That's the other flavor that's been around forever. But the original, for sure, go for that if you haven't had it. I just had to plug that because if you haven't had balls, you got to try balls. I think that's where we're going with this. So,
I'm dying.
But so you had all of that. What was if you had to think of like one highlight moment with that, and I'm going to say, your time in esports in general, whether it was with Complexity or even just with your clans around here, what is your biggest like highlight moment where it was like, I can't believe this just happened?
It was probably, I don't know, like the early days. It was probably going to see MLG with the Complexity WoW team. There was Scott, who I talked about before. Mm-hmm. He was a staff member. We were running around with like these little stupid video cameras that was almost the size of an iPod.
Yeah.
And we were just making videos and like writing content for the website. And like, there's people today that I keep in contact, and they talk about like the influence that as a writer and coverage and staff and the contributions that we made to the early days. They're like, you were legendary still back then. And I'm like, okay, I wrote some articles and covered matches, but like that helped kind of socialize the competition to various, entities that, hey, look at this, there's somebody that is covering this like a sport, or at least trying to.
Yeah.
And that has kind of left a lasting impression. But I think overall, just trying to do all the tech stuff that it comes with, enabling the clan or whatever, that kind of led into the overall tech curiosity from building a PC, learning how to code at an early age. Like I learned how to code at like 11.
Wow.
So like that whole thing is like stuck, where it's always been like finding out what's the next thing, learning how to do it. Because that's been like my entire career thus far, is like.
I was going to say that shows why you went the direction you did with school and career.
Yeah.
And everything like that.
Yeah, I knew what I wanted to do. Computer science. There was no question of like, this is going to be my major. There was no like, oh, I might do this, I might do that. It was always, I'm going to RIT. They're good with computer science. I'm going for computer science.
Yep.
And that was it. There was apply to RIT, and then if I didn't get in, figure it out from there. But luckily we got in.
That's crazy. I think it's rare for someone to have like just everything figured out. Like, I'm gonna do this at such a young age, and it's very impressive. Honestly, it makes me feel like I was the laziest teenager ever, hearing all of the stuff you did with this whole scene. It's
but
really
like
crazy.
Yeah, and I think like like I did some light travel probably halfway through high school, and then I went to like a school trip for Europe. But like I had started traveling a little bit for Complexity before then, because we're getting Complexity at the time. But doing that travel, I think, gave me the itch to continue wanting to travel and see the world. Because if I hadn't had that opportunity, I don't know if I would have been like so keen on like going to see other things.
Yeah.
Some people don't. I mean, I grew up in a small town, right?
You travel a lot, so that it makes sense that, it makes sense that happened. I want to ask one more question. This is going to be a trick question because I didn't hint at it at all.
Ooh, yeah, it's not in the planning notes.
This
like,
isn't in the planning notes, but based on everything we've talked about, if you could have like one perfect game and an opportunity to. You're going to get paid way more money than you get paid somehow now to play this game. You can come up with a new game and say exactly what you would want from it, whether it be like a Counter-Strike clone or an existing game, and say, man, it would be cool to just try and compete again. What game would that be?
I'm going to tell you some stuff first, and then
Okay.
we'll get to that. So, like, we had this idea around the time when Counter-Strike Source came out. Actually, no. Counter-Strike Source I don't think was out yet. Yeah, maybe it was, because this was based off Source Engine. So when I was working at Fnatic, there was a designer there, Ludovic, a.k.a. Alba, who we know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That him and I were working on this team to make this CS Pro mod because Source sucked ass. And it was a balance between, do the pros convert over to Source? And there was this weird thing called Condition Zero, which was kind of a revamped 1.6 in certain ways. So Condition Zero sucked. And people were debating, do we make the jump to Source? Is it too early? The game feels different, plays different a little bit, but still, like, the mechanics are pretty damn close. So there's always like this, how do we make a professional mod for Counter-Strike? And there was this thing called CS Pro mod that we were working on building, that we had early alphas and betas. Alba was doing the graphic design. I was doing some of the programming for, like, the website and some other, assets. And then, trying to build the community for that, working in various esports communities. So, like, we were trying to build that. But I think, if I look at Counter-Strike through its trajectory, CSGO was pretty damn good. Was it perfect? No. But would I have loved to play that at a high level when it was at its peak the last couple of years? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I think Valorant, there's some stuff that they had a really good opportunity. I still think it's a really good game. But some of the movement feels a little slow. I think some of the abilities and, like, there's a lot going on. So for the casual viewer, it's hard to tell with so many agents what's going on.
And I do think they are working on that. I think that's why so many of the abilities, the only difference is color. Even if they do a slightly different thing, like, all of the smokes are circles. The walls are walls. Like all of that stuff, it has, like, a very... It seems like they tried to keep a specific look for each thing and just change it very slightly, so you can kind of try to understand it if you've played once or twice.
So there's an analogy, because this kind of, like, popped off the light bulb when I started playing FIFA on PlayStation, because I used to not like soccer. I used to hate it. Like, I would despise watching it. I didn't care. When I started playing FIFA on PlayStation, you start to notice some of the intricacies of what you're trying to control the guy to do. And then you notice those things when you're watching it in person, on TV, whatever.
Yeah.
So you start to notice, like, the little nuances that makes the game beautiful. And you do this with any sport, right? You watch certain sports to watch when magic happens. And if you notice those things, you appreciate it more. So I'm not a big basketball guy, but I'm sure there's people that, notice certain things about basketball that it makes it beautiful to them. Otherwise, why the fuck would there be NBA fans? But if you can interpret the game that you're watching and appreciate the intricacies, and sometimes maybe you don't notice all that, the brilliant thing you just witnessed, what it is, it's easier to consume as a casual viewer of that game.
Yep.
So if there's a lot going on, and, like, just, like, all this craziness, and you don't, like, really understand because there's so many agents, like, if you watch the same 5 agents, like, you would learn the game faster. But since there's this whole library of agents now, and there's meta from time to time, these compositions of a team, but, like, you have the opportunity to get confused when there's that much variability in the stuff that's going on. And with Counter-Strike, CTs, counter-terrorists versus terrorists. One defends the bomb, one plants the bomb. Kill each other, win the round, get to the score.
Yeah.
Very simple to consume.
I think that there's a big opportunity for Valve to come in, and I don't know if they care, because Valve wants to create new experiences and innovate. Gabe Newell over there, everything he does, like, I mean, look at Half-Life. They didn't make a new one until they could make it in VR and make it a good VR game. I mean, I look at that as the benchmark VR game.
Right.
I also think that's why they've lost their interest in CSGO or Counter-Strike in general, and I would love to see them innovate on it in some way, but I don't know if they will unless there's a new technology or new hurdle for them to cross to make it, like, a groundbreaking thing. I know they talked about there was supposed to be an update coming for it, like a big overhaul, maybe this coming summer to compete with Valorant, but I haven't really heard much about it.
Yeah, so there's the Source engine, and then they talked about upgrading it to the Source 2.
Okay.
That was the big, like, there's going to be a texture, and that whole workshop toolkit was supposed to be released, I think, after Half-Life Alyx came out. And that was, when is Source 2 coming to CSGO? That, being ported to the newer engine. And I think last year is when that kind of sounded like it was dead in the water. But, there's a new time frame, I think, where they're talking about potentially this year.
Yeah, I think I heard something about like this coming summer.
Yeah.
They might try to overhaul it, which could be good. I think in some ways, and I don't know if the diehards would agree with me. You might not agree with me, but as someone who's never played a ton of CSGO and someone who has tried to watch it, I think adding a little more color, a little more pop to it, similar to how Valorant's like look is, but not necessarily going hard into like the cell shading, but just a little more pop and color. And I don't mean going overboard. Might make the viewing experience a little bit better. Everything is so gray and brown, and I know that's how early to mid 2000s all games were. They tried to go for the realism thing. We can do the realism thing now. I don't think that's what we're all looking for, because those colors blend together, and it's just not as appealing to a new viewer, I don't think, as something with a little more pop, something that's easier to follow. I think that's part of why Fortnite popped off so much, is you could literally see where people were shooting the bullets. It had the like hit markers, like you could see how much damage you were doing from across the map. It was easy to watch. Now it's hard to watch with people building so fast, and I don't really follow it anyway. But that game in its early days was fun to play and easy to watch because of how viewable, how like it just made sense. Like you could take one look at it and it was easy to figure out what was happening.
Yeah, and I think if I think about the maps in Counter-Strike, they're mostly made to look like they're in battle-torn areas, which is sand, bricks. There's not a lot of forestry when you look at the maps, which Fortnite definitely has. And then areas of like even Warzone like has the same color scheme. Now that I think about it, in certain areas where it's like very much that neutral, battle-torn, middle of a desert thing.
It does bore me a little bit. I like when they add in the skins. I love when I pick up a gun that has a bright skin on it. Maybe I'm like a goldfish and I just like shiny things.
Did you see my new side-scroller one on my
I
FFAR?
did, yeah, that was pretty sick looking. And this is going to lead me into my final thing, because I actually, once I asked you the question of like what would be your ideal game, I kind of want to talk about mine real quick before we end.
You're on your Pokemon kick, I swear to God.
I've been playing a lot of Pokemon stuff lately, but I'm looking forward to Halo Infinite, and I want it to be amazing. And I think Halo has a big opportunity here to capitalize on people that are just, one, with COVID, everyone's been gaming more. Two, people are looking for the next game. People are tired of Warzone right now. Valorant's been out for over a year. People want something new, a new shooter.
Warzone is still broken as fuck, and there's so much cheaters. And the thing about Halo Infinite is like they need to do something about anti-cheat.
Anti-cheat. The other thing, and this might be me as someone who likes old Halo, not a huge fan of Halo 4 and really not Halo 5. Someone made this comment. I was listening to a podcast the other day. If you get into the game and there is a sprint button, I'm going to break their knees. It's like Halo shouldn't have a sprint button. You just run around, period. Yeah. That's all it is one speed, but it's running. As soon as they added a sprint button, it made it Halo 4 and 5. The reason I didn't like it is because it just felt like Call of Duty in the future. And that was dumb. Halo is
jetpacks and shit like that.
Yeah. Halo should be its own thing and they can update the graphics, modernize it, add new features. I don't care, but I think part of the thing that made Halo so fun was that everyone was kind of on the same, what's the right way to put it? Like level, not how good they were, but they all had the same speed, same jumping ability. There wasn't these weird perks. It was just a raw shooter with fun guns, fun game modes, and different mutators you could add to the game, and a really great, well, it wasn't a great map builder in Halo 3, but the community using it was great and made it great. If they could bring an amazing map builder to that game and really focus on bringing the feel of, like, I think Halo 3, at least for me, was like the pinnacle of the multiplayer. Bring that feel with some really fun updates and really cool maps. I think they're going to blow it out of the water if they can do that. And I'm looking forward to what they do with the campaign. There's a lot of rumors going around about what it is. I can get into that on a different day. But yeah, I could go on about Halo for hours, so I think I should end it there, or else I won't stop talking. I don't know if you're looking forward to Halo Infinite. I know you said you played a bit back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, we used to bring consoles and TVs over to each other's houses to play Halo 2.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like mini LAN party in my parents' living room where we would stay up late and have to be quiet, or, mom would come down and yell at us.
And that was fun.
Mom, if you're listening, but
we all had tube TVs then too.
Yeah. So you had the hulking thing. Yeah, and the evolution of like computer monitors has been insane too, because I think about like when I had like early CRT to like converting back to a flat panel that was like shitty refresh rate to back to a CRT with 120 hertz.
Right.
And the funny thing about like my evolution of like monitors is that early on you played like 640 by 480 on those CRTs, 120 hertz. So like up until recently, I was playing Counter-Strike still at 4:3 ratio stretched. Like I forget what the resolution is, 1280 by 960.
Yeah.
So really shitty looking with like a good computer, but like it was performance. Go for performance.
Well, and that's where the hitboxes fit correct.
It made heads look bigger on the screen too, because things were stretched. So like yeah, a lot of pros still play that, and like some of the younger ones play at 1080 native. I did switch, Valorant. When I started playing that, I did play 1080p native, and then I switched my Counter-Strike soon after that, just to keep it kind of, because it was very jarring to go between the two games and try and figure out my aim. Like things just felt weird trying to be precise and pop heads. So like now everything 4K, and like the competitive side of me is like I want as much FPS to get close enough to 144. Warzone's the only one that's giving me problems when I'm streaming right now.
And I mean, either way, you're running it at 4K high setting is still getting above 100 frames average. If you could get it locked at that,
I would show you it is sick. Noticeable. Like I can turn on G-Sync and it would do the variable refresh rate to like match down to the FPS. But like if I showed you what it looks like when I'm streaming and you were like looking at it, and then I turn off the stream and then you look at it again, it is like it's 40 FPS, 50 FPS, but there is a difference, and I definitely noticed it the moment I shut off my stream last night.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Like it sounds petty, right? It's a first world fucking problem.
Well, you're doing game capture, not monitor capture, right?
I am, which actually performs better.
Right. Yeah. Game capture is the way to go. Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess.
But so think about it. I'm taking 4K, whatever FPS, and down converting it on the fly to 1080 60. Right. So you have to take that and process that down and down convert it on the fly. If I did that with the CPU, for some reason, here's the weird thing. So if I tried between encoding it with my graphics card versus doing H.264 with the CPU, for some reason OBS still uses GPU, and I haven't figured out why. Because I can change that setting, and it doesn't make too much of a difference.
That's weird. I don't know. Yeah, we can definitely look into that. That might be a fun little video to talk about too. But yeah, I think
and there also is a difference if you enable the preview on your OBS deck versus turning that off. It gives you about a 15 I don't know, I was 100% usage with that on, streaming and playing Warzone.
That's so weird.
If it's off, I'll hover between 65 to 70% usage.
That's so weird. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, there's got to be a bug or something.
It's technically taking still the 4K video and then showing it to you just, resized.
This is your fault for having a 3090 and a 4K 140.
Well, the other thing is that I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, oh, what if I had a streaming PC? But then how do you take that 4K 144 hertz signal, send it through something, and then put it through the monitor and still get 144 hertz? Because I do not have HDMI 2.1 on that monitor.
It doesn't?
It does not. So if I plugged in a PS5, I can't get 4K 120 on it.
They make HDMI 2.1 to DisplayPort 1.4 cables.
That's what I would do.
They make those cables.
That's what I would do.
I have one.
What I don't like is that there's only one display port on the monitor.
Oh, that's rough too.
Yeah. There's one DisplayPort, two HDMIs. So like eventually, and this is I might be stealing your thunder, but yes, there will be a video on Mike's YouTube channel at Mike's Nerd Cave doing a tour of my gaming setup, which is pretty ridiculous now. Like I was describing it, like the setup's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I guess for anyone watching this far along, thank you for one, but two, I'm gonna be doing like a mini series, and shout outs to Dom, one of the guys who's always hanging out in the videos, hanging out in my Twitch streams and stuff. He was saying, hey man, you should do some more like studio / setup tour stuff. He really liked my studio tour video, so I'm gonna be doing some. All of my friends now are PC gamers. So I'm going to be doing setup tours and studio tours of their setups, and just something fun to look at. It's going to be kind of a mini series, maybe like 5 or 6 episodes. Nick has a pretty sick one. Our friend Jads, or Joe in real life, has a nice setup. We have another buddy, Snails, Craig, who has one as well. So
he needs to change that handle.
Yeah, I don't know why his name is Snails. I think he said it was like one that like Xbox or Steam or something.
Warzone, it's Crypteasy.
Oh yeah, that's his Xbox name.
Yeah,
that's one that I think Xbox picked for him or something. I don't know, but yeah, I think we're gonna call it here, guys. We went a little over, maybe. I don't know. That's pretty good.
We got 50 minutes on the recorder.
Oh yeah, that's solid. That's right what we're aiming for. So yeah, we're gonna call it here. If you've, like I said, listened to the whole thing, thanks for stopping in. This is gonna be it for episode 7. I don't know, Nick, you want to plug your handles, everything?
Yeah, check out Jet Black on Twitch and Twitter. I'm streaming mostly FPS games, but the occasional Red Dead Online's been fun. Battlefront 2, Star Wars, been real fun. Looks gorgeous in 4K, by the way.
Are you ever gonna get back to finishing the first Final Fantasy VII remake game?
I am. I'm actually talking about setting up my PS4 to finish that, and I might start it over. I might, and then play through it. So Final Fantasy VII remake.
If you could get your hands on that PS5, you could play the actual remastered version for the PS5 that comes out this summer.
For those not watching video, I'm staring at Mike right now because he has both a PS5 and a new Xbox, yet he calls himself a PC gamer. So, yeah.
Nick, I'm for all gaming. Game on any platform you want. I love all gamers. So, yeah, just... Yeah, so
check out Jet Black on Twitch and Twitter, and check out shop.midnightslate.com for the Midnight Slate content team. Mike is part of that content team as a streamer, YouTuber, and we're going to be trying to figure out a couple more things this year with podcasting and other video content related around gaming, tech, and other fun stuff. And of course, my vlogs might be returning as well. I got a couple trips coming up, so
finally able to travel again.
Yeah,
got that vaccine.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got Hyler's wedding coming up.
Yeah.
I actually might have a work trip coming up in April, so might have like 2 things back to back. Not back to back, but like very close compared to like being at home for the last year.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. Well, I'll see you guys in the next video. Can't even speak. See you guys in the next video or in the next podcast. But it's Mike's Nerd Cave. See you in the next one.
Come find us on Discord.
Yeet.